Welcome to the Andy Staples Show. Still here in Indianapolis. Lovely, lovely city. Home of great shrimp cocktails. I'm sure you've heard that before. I'm here with Scott Docterman from The Athletic. Scott covers Iowa, but I have just learned that Scott basically is the next Mel Kiper or Todd McShay. I'm looking over these beautiful handwritten notes. Scott, show that to the camera. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, this is some of the finest handwriting you're ever going to see. But look, I mean, it is, the detail is incredible. Mm-hmm. These are the stats from different NFL teams from last year, right?
Yeah, this is from the defensive side of the ball, and then also I go through player salary, how many people are under contract, how many defensive ends, defensive linemen. I do that just to try to give a good projection as to where I think some players are going to end up.
Scott, this is scaring me because obviously you're a very valuable part of this show that we do. You're extremely valuable to us at The Athletic with your coverage of Iowa, owning that beat. You're going to get hired as a capologist by an NFL team, and then we're going to be screwed. So this is scaring me here a little bit.
Yeah, the job security in that market is kind of on a whim.
Little bit, but yeah, no, we got to talk about that. Well, the penmanship is just, I can't even read my own handwriting. How do you manage to write this beautifully?
Because I print it, and it takes a lot of time. Because if you were to go through some of my Sanskrit here, like this.
Okay.
Yeah.
That looks more like what I do.
That's a reporter's notebook.
Okay.
But this is sitting down, trying to jot it down so I can read it.
So we're still here in Indianapolis. As we're recording this on Thursday afternoon. The corners have talked.
Yeah.
We're getting the quarterbacks on Friday morning. The corners will be running tomorrow and working out, and the quarterbacks and receivers will work out on Saturday. Big dudes show up Saturday, work out Sunday. This has been an interesting time so far. All the Jalen Carter stuff hit on Wednesday as we were waiting for the defensive lineman to talk. But you've got a couple guys you covered here. I'm very interested in Lucas Van Ness, who's an edge rusher from Iowa, who Dane Brugler, our draft analyst, says he's going to jump up the draft boards. He's going to test really well here. He's an interesting one because he's not like an every down player at Iowa, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of A.J. Epinesa, the way they used him, although they're kind of the opposite person. A.J. was technically perfect, but not athletically perfect. Mm-hmm. Lucas is the athletic freak who has, some upside technically, where he can actually get better there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, AJ was an oak in the forest. He was tough. He was a hard-nosed pass rusher. In 2018, as you were referencing, he was a backup, and he led the Big Ten in sacks.
It's crazy.
Parker Hesse was his the guy ahead of him, who was he was a 4-year starter, senior, and then he's playing tight end with the Atlanta Falcons right now, by the way. He's
good athlete.
Yeah, he's a good athlete, but AJ was a little more proficient. But what they decided to do, I mean, Parker at that point, and this is the same case here.
Yeah.
Off the charts as far as character. Yep. Work ethic, tough dude, guy everybody wanted to follow. And so he had a lot of equity in the system, so he stayed there. AJ,
so you're talking about Parker Hesse, not Phil Parker, the defensive coordinator. Yeah,
he has a lot of equity too. In the system.
Lots of equity.
A lot of equity. But then this year, Lucas Van Ness is a little bit different because Epinesa was a 5-star, so everybody knew he was going to play. Van Ness was kind of like the third or fourth guy in his recruiting class. Came during the COVID year, was just kind of a guy during that fall. Last in 2021, he played more interior. Yeah, which is kind of wow. I didn't expect that to happen, but he built himself up to where he played in their NASCAR package when they go third down pass rush, and then they knew they wanted to move him outside. But Iowa had 2 5th-year starting seniors. Yeah, that it's 2 of them had started for 2 years, so it was like, do you bump them out? Well, I brought this. I keep all their snap charts, and
of course you do,
and stuff. So, at the end of the year, Van Ness ended with 8 fewer snaps than Joe Evans, but that's because he didn't play nearly as much in the bowl game. Yeah, which I think he'd already made his decision, so they're moving on with other people. So, so during the regular season, Van Ness had more snaps than all the other defensive ends.
Just wasn't officially a starter. Yeah. It's funny because you see that as a criticism of Kirk Ferentz and the way he handles things, but I have very little problem with how Phil Parker manages his people in general because he gets the results you want. they get drafted.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing you can criticize about Iowa's defense.
The other side of the ball we have, and we will,
a little bit. Drive for 325 continues.
Exactly. But yeah, they have 4 defenders here. They averaged 3.99 yards per play last year, which was the best since Bama in 2017. And they didn't have the benefit of playing their own offense.
Right.
Everybody else did.
Can you even imagine? Well, I guess they practiced, but
yeah, those were not good practices, by the way.
Well, another guy who talked today, who we're going to see work out on Friday, is Riley Moss, the cornerback, and he got some looks and got some questions today. And look, we're not going to make this a political thing or however you want to frame it. He's a white cornerback. Let's just put it out there. And he, if all goes according to his plan, will be the first white dude to start at corner in the NFL since Jason Sehorn. Now, he does not want to be a cause.
Right.
He's made that very clear. And it's just, but I do think it's interesting because that is something like on teams, like it's the players get a kick out of it a lot more. People think there's like serious conversations going on a lot. No, they just think it's fun.
Yeah, it's never really been an issue. And even the players here, Kayvon Merriweather, who's one of his teammates for 5 years, they came in the same recruiting class. He came in with Juju Brents, too, from Kansas State. And they've kind of joked about it, like Kayvon's like, hey, that white boy can run. It's just things like that. And it's true. His target is 4.38.
Wow.
In the 40. And I think he'll hit
He
it.
played great in the Senior Bowl practices, too. So, it looks like he's going to wind up being a starting NFL cornerback. And I thought Deontay Lee I believe he's from Pro Football Focus, a very good draft analyst. The way he put it was, he's like, I don't want to make anything out of this, but it is weird seeing him getting the kind of questions that black quarterbacks got in the 80s and 90s. And I was trying to explain that to my son the other day because going to the Super Bowl, it was the first matchup of 2 black quarterbacks, starting quarterbacks in the Super Bowl. And he's like, why are they even talking about this? And I said, because when I was a kid, it was a whole thing. And like poor Warren Moon had to justify, like, it didn't make any sense. And it was dumb. And it's dumb for any position. Like, if you can play, you can play. And Deontay had the great line where he said, judge him by the content of his tape, talking about Riley Moss. And it's true. It's a weird situation. And again, we're not going to turn this into something it's not. But it is something that I guarantee you when he shows up at camp, it's going to be a thing, and his teammates are going to have some fun with him.
Absolutely. It's good. It's a lot like basketball.
Yeah.
Until you prove you can play, people are going to doubt you. And in his case, he is an incredible athlete. He's been able to, he set the Iowa State hurdles record, ran like 14-1 in the 110.
The hurdlers are just different. Like Robert Griffin III was a hurdler. Those dudes are athletes.
Yes. It's incredible. And it's going to be a talking point for sure. It was way back when. He got burned pretty badly a couple of times when he was his first start. This is crazy. Him and Julius Brents were both true freshmen at Minnesota against Tyler Johnson and Rashad Bateman. And like Riley said, and I remember vividly, I was there, they tested me early long, and he ended up with 2 interceptions, was Big Ten Freshman of the Week. And, in 2021, he picked off Michael Penix twice for touchdowns, and he had, I think, 13 career interceptions, really good ball skills, can break on the ball, has good hips, has everything that everybody's looking for. It's just the little white part of it,
Well, he either can play or not. And that is the beauty of sports. And I am glad that the quarterback position has gotten out of that because it was weird to me as a kid, and you were young too when this was going on. Like very strange to me. Like I didn't understand why anybody cared what color the quarterback was and why you would think it was any different. And so I'm glad that part of it's been removed. And it's interesting to me with sports because I'm fascinated by like some of these guys that come from other countries that have never seen football before because they just don't know that they could be good at it because it's not around them. And it's the same thing. Like you shouldn't shuttle people into a position just because if you look like this or if you come from this place, you should be good at this. Like, look at what's happened in basketball, where a bunch of different cultures have taken over the game, and it's changed the game and changed what we think of, what a big guy can do, or because all of a sudden all these very large but also very athletic people from Eastern European countries start coming over, and you're like, wait, they can dribble. So tall people can dribble too.
Exactly.
Like, you can do that. So it is really interesting. So that's the way I feel about it with football is high school coaches, all those people, just play the guys where they fit best. If they're fast, play them a corner, and it's not that complicated.
Well, remember, I just got out of high school. I think you were either at the end of your high school career. Charlie Ward is a great example.
Oh, my God. Charlie Ward would have been... Now, listen, Charlie Ward was a first-round NBA draft pick.
Exactly.
And if you've ever talked to Charlie Ward, and I've actually talked to him about this, like, he's a really measured, smart, humble guy. And he'll tell you, like, if you're going to be a first-round NBA draft pick with the guaranteed money, and then you do that.
Sure.
But can you imagine Charlie Ward in today's offenses?
Would have been great. I mean, you think about what Vic did once he came in 01 or 02, and then you put him in 5, 6, 7 years earlier. And I know there was an NFL Network had a show kind of documenting that draft, and it had Carl Peterson with the Chiefs talking about, well, should we draft him or not? And I'm thinking, when you look at the Chiefs of the mid-'90s, they had that amazing defense with Derek Thomas.
Also, let's not forget Christian Okoye, the Nigerian nightmare.
And the hit that Water put on him. But Charlie Ward, if he would have been there with them in that era, they would have gotten more out of him. Now, Rich Gannon was really good, and unfortunately, he was number 2 on that team. I remember Elvis Gerbach very well. I covered him for a year. But I think if you would have had Charlie Ward doing the things that he does well.
I just don't think he would have. I mean, and he probably would have gone to the NFL if he could have been a first or second round draft pick. But I mean, when the NBA tells you you're going to be a first round draft pick, like you're going to need some guarantees in the football side of things.
Sure.
And so, that was what happened. I think he probably would have gotten drafted if the NBA had not been an option for him. But he had told people, look, it better be high because I've been told I'm getting drafted high in the NBA. And it's like, that's the other thing that's mind blowing to me with Charlie Ward. Like, can you imagine being so good of an athlete that you are the Heisman Trophy winner, but also a first round draft pick in the NBA?
What, you think Dion is probably in that ballpark? Tony Gonzalez, but he was not an NBA guy.
Now, Dave Winfield got drafted in Major League Baseball, NFL, and NBA. Dave Winfield might be, I don't know, because it's hard with Dion. Like, Dion didn't put any time into basketball or anything because he was playing baseball and football. Seems like he'd be that kind of athlete that could have done it all. Yeah. But the Winfield thing is one of the more mind-blowing stats in sports history.
Right, and he could have played, legitimately, he could have played any of the things.
Oh, yeah.
He was just an unreal athlete across the board.
And so now everybody specializes. It's not the same thing. But man, it's fun to think about this stuff, the way, because here's another thing. I was talking to somebody the other day about Bill Snyder. And we look at Bill Snyder as kind of this, stuck in his ways, older guy, the handwritten notes.
Right.
Bill Snyder in the late 90s was so far ahead of his time offensively. Like what they were doing with Michael Bishop. Can you imagine if some of the other power programs of the time had adopted that offense at the time?
It would have been unreal. He was great. He's fantastic. I mean, he hit above his weight class at K-State in that era, no question, because Nebraska was still good.
Yes.
It was still an elite program, and he was able to go toe-to-toe with them. And then they had L. Roberson. They bounced through there. And one of the things he took care of was there's a lot of junior colleges in that part of the world.
Yes.
And he was able to get a lot of JUCO talent. But, man, schematic-wise, and then there's been very few as good as him.
So, Scott, you are much more into the NFL than a lot of our college football writers, and as evidenced by your future career as a capologist. But who are you most excited to see work out here in Indianapolis?
Oh, wow. I think I want to see Quentin Johnson.
Oh,
because
yeah.
I think he's a top 10 guy athletically, and I think he can solidify himself there. And it's just a matter of, because this wide receiver, first of all, Jackson Smith and Jigba, had he played.
That's who I want to see because we haven't seen him in forever.
Right. I mean, I saw him just for about 7 plays against Iowa this year, and then his hamstring acted up and he couldn't play the rest of the game. But there's something about Quentin Johnson, his size, his frame, his speed. Can he prove that he is X receiver, number one receiver, and can he be a top 10 pick? To me, he's probably one that stands out as a guy I really want to see.
Yeah, because the other receivers, everybody kind of fits a niche. Like Jalen Hyatt, he is a take the top off the defense kind of guy. But he's a complementary piece to a what you are saying Quentin Johnson might be.
Yeah.
We don't know yet. But I'm with you because I thought what he did at TCU, and it's in a situation a lot of times where TCU's opponents knew they're going to feed him a lot, and he still managed to catch a lot of balls.
I loved that Big 12 championship game, him going against Julius Brents.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great matchup because Brents is a guy that we talked to over there, but, big, physical, man-to-man corner. He also played a lot of quarter half when he was at Iowa for 3 years. But that matchup to me just said, okay, these guys are going to go at it for probably another 10 years.
Yeah.
And I thought Johnson probably got the best of him in that game. But overall, I think he's probably one, as you mentioned, Smith and Jigba, because I want to see, okay, is everything cool with him?
I mean, it feels like the last full game we saw him play the Rose Bowl against Utah?
Last full game, yeah.
Yeah, which was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Now, Utah was pretty thin in the secondary of that game, but it didn't matter. Smith and Jigba had at that point probably established himself as the best receiver in the country.
Yes.
Then, probably got surpassed by Marvin Harrison Jr. on his own team, but it's just it's a testament to what Brian Hartline has been able to do at Ohio State. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and they're a fan of an SEC team, and they're like, I can't believe all these receivers are going to Ohio State. I'm like, why wouldn't you?
Yes.
Like, all they do is create first rounders.
Look at the last just 2.5 years when you talk about Garrett Wilson. Jamison Williams didn't crack it. So he left and he only became, the 12th pick overall last year. Chris Olave, Smith and Jigba is going to be a first rounder. Marvin Harrison may be a top 3 pick next year because he's actually the best of the bunch, I think.
Yes.
He's like his dad, except a lot bigger. Smooth route runner, fast, big, physical. If he was out this year, he'd be a top 3 or 4 pick himself. So then they've got other ones too every year.
Yeah.
Just kind of cycle through.
It is going to be amazing to see how that all shakes out because, and it's interesting because Alabama's well finally ran dry on that one. Now I suspect that they've got some in the pipeline coming up that are going to replenish that. But it's funny because we're having the quarterback conversation, and that's what I've been doing some shows with our NFL team beat writers, and like Zach Kiefer, who covers the Colts, was asking me about Bryce Young because the Colts are definitely in the quarterback market.
Right.
I feel like Bryce Young is more impressive than other Alabama quarterbacks of recent vintage because he didn't have this year those great receivers. He did not have the kind of line that those Alabama quarterbacks have enjoyed playing behind. And you saw Bryce. I mean, Bryce won the Heisman Trophy when he had Jamison Williams and John Mechie.
Yeah.
And this year, he still led them to an 11-2 record. And the 2 games they lost, they barely lost.
Right.
So I don't care how big he is. I do not care what he weighs.
Right.
I do not care how tall he is. He's the best at football of these quarterbacks. And that's why I would be excited if I were a fan of a team that takes him. Like, I don't care how small he is. Just watch him play.
When you start to look at, the GOAT status of all these great quarterbacks over the years, size really doesn't matter. I mean, when you look at Tom Brady, when he was here, he
was skinny.
6'4", 211, skinny, dad bod at age 21. Not fast at all, never has been, and even worse, but he's only the greatest to ever do it. Joe Montana, he's built a lot like Bryce Young, in some ways. I mean, he's probably 6'1".
He's bigger, yeah.
But, those qualities, the it factor is what you have to look at. I mean, I understand he's going to measure 5'10 and a half, 5'11". He's not going to be 200 pounds. So then some people are going to say, well, he can't take a hit. Well, he can take a hit.
Yeah.
Other people can't. And I think in his case, I think he's got a chance to be special, do special things. The other one, he's not going to be able to work out, obviously. Hendon Hooker was just unreal this year. And I think he's going to be a steal. If let's say I'm like the Detroit Lions in the third round and you're going, we've already had 4 or 5 picks. We like Goff. I don't know if we think he can take us to the Super Bowl, but
he can take him to the playoffs.
Right.
Yeah.
And he pretty much did last year.
They should have made the playoffs, let's be honest.
Right. But then you look at Hendon Hooker and you go, next year's redshirt year for him. We already got our guy in place.
He's coming off a late season torn ACL. So if you take Hendon Hooker, you don't take him planning. And Hendon coming out of that offense is going to need time to adjust to an NFL offense. But one thing you do not doubt about Hendon is his ability to lead a locker room, because that was abundantly clear at Tennessee. And so that I do think that's interesting. Now, I think the Lions are one that may consider Anthony Richardson based on where they are. I'm starting to come to grips with this.
Okay.
I realize I've been saying that I've been taking crazy. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, and when I'm on Prospects to Pros with Dane Brugler, I'm just really. You guys think he's going to go this? Not only having been here, do I think he's going to go in the top 10? I think there's a chance he might go in the top 5. I think now we'll see what happens Saturday. I could be completely wrong. Maybe he's not accurate on Saturday, and there are more questions. But if he runs, he's going to run a great time. He's going to jump a great jump. His deep ball is going to be more beautiful than anybody else's, except maybe C.J. Stroud's. I mean, C.J. Stroud, he just throws a pretty ball.
He does.
But Anthony Richardson at that size, at 6'5", at 235, 240, whatever he weighs in at, if he's accurate, everybody in this building is going to come out of it going, whatever problems he had at Florida, we can fix them.
Yeah, and everybody thinks they're a miracle worker. And here's the problem, though. Every single draft class, and I've charted it, I don't have it with me this time, but every single draft class has, for every one that hits, one doesn't.
Yes.
It doesn't matter which class, take a look at all of them. And so you might have, you look at a Jake Locker, great athlete.
The Tim Tebow of the Pacific Northwest.
Right, and gone. Christian Ponder, you have guys like that who look the part, aren't the part. And I think you look at the same thing. There are 4 first-round guys here.
Well, see, I'd take Anthony over those guys because he looks the part more. And so the ceiling is there. The problem is the floor is lower than definitely lower than a Bryce Young or a C.J. Stroud, maybe lower than a Will Levis. I'm not sold on Levis either.
Yeah.
But I do think, and everybody brings out the Josh Allen example, and my response to that is, okay, that's one. But here's another one that I keep thinking about more and more. Jalen Hurts did not make the throws in college that we saw him making in the Super Bowl.
That's true.
That happened after he got in the NFL. Like even at Oklahoma, he got better at Oklahoma, but he didn't have the kind of touch he has on the ball now. So it is possible to really sharpen your skill set and sharpen. Jalen was a very accurate quarterback in college, but a lot of the times he was throwing to fairly wide open people because the offenses he was running had great running games too that the defenses were scared of. But so that's where I'm sort of dialing it back a little bit on Anthony Richardson, because I do think from a physical tool standpoint, he is going to be the best physical skill set these people have seen since maybe Cam Newton.
Wow, that's saying a lot. I can see that. I think he does possess so many of those great traits. But the thing that this is what these meetings are going to be about, and over the next couple months is, does he have the mental makeup to handle the adversity of the situation? And you look at Zach Wilson, incredible arm. We wowed everybody in that.
And then just fell apart. Yeah.
Remember who's the Notre Dame quarterback that went in the second round about 3 or 4 years ago, had just an incredible, he was about 6'4", 230, beautiful, went to Cleveland.
DeShone Kizer.
Yeah, DeShone Kizer. And then next thing you know, faded
He
out.
threw a pretty ball too.
Yeah. I mean, you have all these examples. Now, you got to have a high ego, but you also have to know the character of this guy. Can he handle it?
Yeah, and Anthony's an interesting one because he's been. I think some people think he's been a little too honest when he's had doubts about himself. Like after the Kentucky game this year, and I remember there was a hit in the first quarter, a play in the first quarter where pretty good blocking. He gets through to the second level, and a linebacker named Jarquez Jones, who had transferred from Ole Miss, was not a huge guy, like a little bit undersized guy, meets him one-on-one and plants him. And that hasn't happened to Anthony Richardson in probably his entire life. And it looked like it freaked him out a little bit. And he throws a pick later to an outside linebacker who just speared it with one hand, like one of those superhuman type plays. And he said after the game that he felt like that sort of rattled him a little bit, that pick rattled him a little bit. And it's it's honest. As a reporter, I love the honesty. Sure. I think it's great. If you're one of the teammates, if you're a coach, I don't know, maybe you do want the false bravado or I don't care. I want that in my cornerbacks. Like I want them to forget everything. With a quarterback, I do want them to be thinking a little bit about, am I putting the ball in harm's way here, all this stuff. But I do wonder about that. Like, as a quarterback, do you have to project that image the entire time? Or can you show yourself as a little bit vulnerable?
I think as long as you can overcome it, it's okay. But there are quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson, Carson Wentz, whatever, are jailbait for coaches and GMs because they look the part, and then you're drawn in, and you're like, we can do this. He was at Florida. He didn't have great.
Carson Wentz is 2 teams in on that. I mean, the Colts and the Commanders had the same thing.
Exactly.
So.
We could fix this guy. He's this close. And for whatever reason, it hasn't. And I think it's more mental than physical, it seems. And I wonder that about Anthony, Richardson, if that's the same case. Or if he gets, if you're let's say you're the Lions. Now, I'm not saying that there's some.
But that's the right situation for him because Jared Goff can play for a year.
Yeah.
And because I don't think if you take Anthony Richardson and you try to start him next year, you're making a mistake.
Absolutely.
Like you're potentially ruining somebody who could be great.
I saw Tim Couch. I know that was right.
I remember Tim Couch very well.
At Kentucky, he was fantastic. He went to the Browns, and then they ruined him. He got injured, but mentally, by trying to start him out early. David Carr was the same way. Just a fantastic arm, and so you wonder, you've got to make sure you bring them along in the right direction. I think Bryce Young and I think CJ Stroud could handle that if they go to Indianapolis, maybe Carolina, someplace like that. Day one, you're our starter. It works out well. I'm not as sure about Will Levis, and I'm definitely not. I don't think I would put Anthony Richardson in a position where he'd have to play right away. Otherwise, you'll ruin him and you'll get yourself fired.
By the way, earlier I was talking about Deontay Lee.
Yeah.
I forgot he came to work for us. He works for us now.
Yeah.
What am I thinking? So we just roll deep here at the Athletic. Good Lord. All we do is add talent.
Yeah.
So, but this is going to be a fascinating weekend because I will be very interested to know, like, what are me and Ari talking about on Monday's show? Which players are the ones that the NFL people are buzzing about? Because sometimes it matches what we saw on the field in college football, and sometimes it just doesn't.
Well, you look at running back. That to me is probably the biggest indicator because you look at who are the All-Americans. Well, John Robinson was fantastic. We know that part because he's built like that. But guys like Chase Brown, Mo Ibrahim, Israel Kanabande, those are guys that were highly sought after, but then they're kind of down. And then you see a guy like from, Zach Evans who transferred and was really good, but Dwayne McBride from UAB, how does their upward
like
doing?
Israel Abanikanda at Pitt was a touchdown machine. Like I believe he might have led the Power 5 in touchdowns scored. And he didn't get a lot of pub because Pitt, won the ACC the year before, but was kind of a middling team this past year. And I have a back that I keep bringing up that I think will, if he gets on the right team, everybody's going to be like, how in the world did he fall to Tank Bigsby from Auburn?
Yeah.
Skill set's great, hasn't played behind a very good offensive line to this point. If he goes, let's say he winds up on the Eagles.
Right.
Like, all of a sudden, life gets a lot easier for Tank.
Exactly. He's one. Roshan Johnson at Texas.
Yeah.
He was a backup, but, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, I guess it was. But when you had Arkansas with Felix Jones and Darren McFadden.
And Peyton Hillis.
On
the same team.
Some really fascinating guys. I mean, it happens at Georgia seemingly every year.
Yeah.
Ty J. Spears from
Tulane. Yep.
I think he's going to be a guy that tests off the charts, or at least is there.
Kenny McIntosh is one I'm interested in seeing, because Kenny has the reputation of he's a great receiver out of the backfield. But I thought, especially late in the season at Georgia, he did a good job in between the tackles. And, you could say, their offensive line is just so much. Maybe that's the case. But he looked pretty slippery on some of those runs where, like I remember at the Peach Bowl, it didn't feel like those holes were enormous sometimes. And he was getting through.
Another one, I got the chance to watch him several years, and that's Mo Ibrahim from Minnesota. I call him beast mode because he reminds me of
Marshawn Lynch.
Lynch. But the one thing with him is he's slated about 6th round, and
that's a medical thing though, isn't it? He's got a ton of carries in college. Right. He's got knee injuries.
He had the Achilles tear.
Oh, Achilles. That's right. That's what it is. Okay.
So he's had a ton of carries, but if you're the thing is, at running back, you don't think of it as maybe a quarterback where it's like an 8 to 10 year term. You look at it as a 3 to 4 year.
Oh, you look at one contract. I mean, we've talked about this on the show before, and on Prospects or Pros with Dane, we talk about it all the time. I don't think you should ever sign a running back to a second contract. You can always find somebody else, and it's a harsh way of looking at it. And you want those guys to be able to get paid, but if you were running the team, the fact of the matter is you can probably find that production somewhere in the middle of the draft rather than pay a premium for it.
Well, you look at Ezekiel Elliott right now. He was the second best running back for the Cowboys, and now
go back and look at the offensive line that they had his first couple of years.
Exactly.
It may have something to do with his success.
I had a conversation with the Bears guys about what do you do with David Montgomery. David's been a very productive player, a very good player, but do you pay him or do you go draft Chase Brown from Illinois in the 5th round
and feel like you're getting pretty much similar production?
Exactly. Yeah. It's a buyer's market when it comes to running back. So I'm fascinated to see what Gibbs, a Shane, those guys are going to do well.
Yeah, Devon Achane from A&M is a really interesting one because he's he's legit track speed. Like I can't wait to see what he runs. But he's a football player. Like anybody who watched him play at A&M knows he didn't mind carrying between. And he's not big, but he didn't mind carrying between the tackles against some really nasty defenses. And you can return kicks with him. He's pretty versatile. So I wouldn't be shocked if Achane goes high 2nd round and becomes a pretty good NFL player. I think you can use him a little way the Jags use Travis Etienne.
Okay. Would he have any kind of ability to do what Tyreek Hill does?
Maybe. I don't think he's as versatile in the pass game, or he's nowhere near as versatile in the pass game as Tyreek Hill. But I do think you can, I mean, from a pure speed standpoint, I don't know if he's quite as fast as Tyreek Hill, but he's close.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing. If he can break through to the 2nd level, he can make some people miss and do some damage. So that's another one. But it's going to be a fascinating next few months as they break this down and figure out how they want to order these guys and they put their boards together. But Scott, we did the typical indie tourist thing, and we got to talk about this.
Yeah.
So we talk about food quite a bit on this show. Listen, if you go to Indianapolis, and I know half of you listening to this have been to a convention in Indianapolis, and you probably were told to do this. Do it anyway. Yeah. I know everybody says to do it. Do it because it's awesome. The St. Elmo Shrimp Cocktail, St. Elmo Steakhouse, is a good steakhouse. It is not an off-the-charts, incredible, life-changing experience steakhouse. Now, you also may not be able to get into St. Elmo. Like, we couldn't get into St. Elmo this week. We are not Jerry Jones. We do not own an NFL team. So we couldn't get a reservation. The good news is Harry and Izzy's, same management company, next door to St. Elmo, Same shrimp cocktail, similar steaks. We had great steaks.
Yeah.
The ribeye I had was outstanding. But this shrimp cocktail, I know everybody says, it's just a shrimp cocktail. It's just shrimp and cocktail sauce. Yeah, but the cocktail sauce has so much horseradish in it. So we did a little video and made sure we recorded this for posterity. So here is Scott taking down his first shrimp. We got Scott Doctorman here trying the only thing spicier than Iowa's offense. The St. Elmo shrimp cocktail, which we're having in Harry and Izzy's because I'm not Jerry Jones and I can't get a reservation.
Or
St. Elmo.
cottage cheese on Thanksgiving, right?
That's right.
Yes.
This is the opposite of that. Watch it singe the nostrils. Woo! How we feel?
My nose is on fire. Great.
It's like a 44-yard punt that's down on the half-yard line.
Saw a lot of those this year.
All right, and that is Scott. And now it was my turn to have that first shrimp. And every time you experience it and you haven't had it in a while, it feels new. All right, now it's my turn. I have my little shrimp pork. We're gonna grab one of these suckers. The tails are already off because they want you to. The first time I ever came to Indianapolis, I had one of the worst colds I've ever had in my life. The only time I could breathe was eating this shrimp cocktail. That is how good this is. But that first time you smell it, it's an assault on the senses.
It's like a smelling salt.
It's that initial whoosh, and then it comes flying through your nostrils. Whoa!
It's more tingly than hot.
The good news is I have this bacon to wash it down. That is a thing of beauty right there. The slab bacon, Scott, was an inspired choice by me, I think, to wash that down.
It's a perfect setting. You're in Big Ten country. Slab of bacon, the first original trophy for Minnesota, Wisconsin. Wrong state, but still, it was beautiful.
The slab of bacon trophy.
Yes.
Why is that trophy not?
Oh, this is a great story.
Wait. We need a song to introduce Big Ten trophy story time with Scott Doctorman. So I'm gonna try to come up with one right now.
Okay.
Let's see. They couldn't just play a football game. They needed to play for a trophy, and pork was involved because it was the Big Ten. It's story time. It's Big Ten trophy story time with Scott Doctorman. There you go.
There you go. Well, for the first part of the 20th century, Minnesota and Wisconsin did play for a slab of bacon. Then in World War II, the Minnesota coach at the time, and Bernie Bierman was off to war, so it's decided, hey, this is too trite to be playing for a trophy during a war.
Okay, well, so, I can live with that.
And so Wisconsin said, okay, they grabbed the trophy, they kept it, they lost it in a storage locker in Camp Randall Stadium.
Wait, so is it near the civil conflict trophy, like at Bob Diaco's house somewhere?
Well, I know this one. What makes this even better is, then they flipped it and they made it the axe, which is a great trophy.
Okay, the axe is fantastic.
Yeah.
What if they use the axe to chop the slab of bacon?
Or, if Minnesota could ever win them at the same time, they could chop Floyd of Rosedale, but they haven't done that in 30 plus years.
You could cut some bacon off of Floyd of Rosedale. That's true.
But the slab of bacon was lost in Camp Randall Stadium until 1994. So for 48 years.
Did Barry Alvarez just find it in a closet somewhere?
Yeah, they were moving some stuff and cleaning some stuff out, and they found it. The funny part was somebody knew that it was there and kept putting all the team's scores on it. For the last 45 years, but everybody thought it was lost to history. So it is a relic, but it's not used anymore. But the slab of bacon, we're in Big Ten country, baby.
Wow. So I thought the battle for the Bones Trophy when Memphis and UAB were conference opponents was the best trophy game ever because it's the first giant rack of ribs, basically. The slab of bacon may be better. Scott, have you tried? My local grocery store has started selling pork belly, where you just it's in the meat section. You can grab a big hunk of pork belly, and so I've done it where I get that and I chop it up and make bacon burn ends. Have you had bacon burn ends yet?
Yeah, I have. I haven't made them, but I have had them. They're good.
They are idiot-proof to make because there's so much fat in the bacon that it renders down beautifully, and you cannot mess them up. It is incredible. So that's what, man, the axe and the slab of bacon should be a co-trophy game.
Yeah.
Because Minnesota and Wisconsin are going to keep playing. Like, they're going to be permanent opponents.
They better. Yeah.
So you're going to have the axe. You may as well bring it back. Or games at Camp Randall are for the axe. Games in Minneapolis are for the slab of bacon.
That would be
And you
fun.
can possess them both at the same time, but you have to have a winning streak.
There you go. That's not bad. Well, I tell you what, I don't know if you heard about this one a few years ago when Minnesota finally beat Wisconsin after like 15 straight losses. They all brought Axe body spray with them to Camp Randall Stadium.
Ooh.
And
So the smell of gentlemen who have just finished a football game combined with Axe body spray.
they brought it in their bags, and then they sprayed the whole locker room because they wanted to leave the axe.
That never comes out. Wow.
So, there's a lot of gamesmanship in a lot of those trophy games. I mean, the Floyd of Rosedale is exactly the same way.
I'm shocked they didn't change the motto from row the boat to spray the axe.
Yeah. So I talked to a couple players like that, and then I think Wisconsin was going to do something like that again just to get back at them.
Scott, I should have known. We didn't plan this, by the way.
Yeah.
We did not plan for Big Ten Trophy Story Time with Scott Docterman, but we should have known it was going to end this way because that's how it always ends, with a story about a Big Ten Trophy game, usually pork related, usually cutting instrument related. Mm-hmm. And now we've combined the two, and we've come up with a great idea, and we just need the Universities of Wisconsin and Minnesota to do it.
And I've got pictures on my phone. It'll take me a million years to get through it. But what Iowa does after it wins Floyd of Rosedale is have a hog roast. So then they have the big hog, and then they have the apple in the hog's mouth. And a few years ago there was the...
Could they put a stuffed Goldie the Gopher in the hog's mouth? I feel like that would be the better way to handle this.
There's already so many different things with that history, but like the year when now you can't do that because of the timeout rule that's getting changed, right?
Oh yeah, you can't. Yeah. You can't double ice the kicker.
And Kirk called 3 timeouts in a row after PJ Fleck called one, and he's like, "I figured we'd take Floyd home with us and leave the timeouts here." So even Kirk
is low key salty.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That's a. We don't like how many scholarships you offer.
Yes.
We don't like that you offer 450 scholarships a year, and we've got to then parse through them.
Yes.
So, listen, trophies, timeouts, saltiness. There is no better sport than college football. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you again on Monday.